I set down my mimosa carefully, the crystal glass catching the morning light streaming through the windows of my parents' dining room. The orange juice and champagne mixture had cost $180 for the bottles. I knew because I'd sent Mom the money to buy them 2 weeks ago, a Venmo transfer she'd thanked Jenna for. Maya lives in a shoebox apartment, Jenna had announced to the entire Easter brunch table, her voice dripping with performative sympathy. In Belltown. Can you imagine? All those tech bros and she can barely afford 600 square feet. My parents laughed. Actually laughed like my supposed poverty was a charming personality quirk. 17 people sat around the extended table. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. All of them now looking at me with a mixture of pity and secondhand embarrassment. It's a penthouse in Belltown, I said. The laughter died like someone had flipped a switch. Mom's fork clattered against her plate, the sound sharp in the sudden silence. How can you afford that? I pulled out my phone, opened my documents folder and turned the screen toward her. Would you like to see the lease? Jenna's hands started trembling. Her mimosa sloshed dangerously close to the rim of her glass. Maya Chen, 32 years old. Senior financial analyst at Cascade Investment Partners in Seattle. I make $142,000 a year base salary, plus performance bonuses that typically add another $40,000 to $60,000. I've been managing a portfolio worth $380 million for the past 18 months. Jenna is 27. She's an administrative assistant at a dental office, making $38,000 a year. She lives with her boyfriend in a 2-bedroom apartment in Renton that costs $1,800 a month, half of which I've been covering for the past year because she called me crying about eviction. But Jenna has always been the favorite. Mom took my phone with shaking hands. Her eyes moved across the screen, getting wider with each line she read. This says. She stopped. Started again. This says $4,800 a month. That's correct, I said. 2-bedroom, 2-bath penthouse. 15th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Rooftop access. 2 parking spaces in the secured garage. Dad leaned over to look at the screen. His face went pale. Maya, this is... How long have you been living here? 2 years, I said. I moved in April 2023. You never told us, Mom whispered. I did tell you, I corrected. Last Easter actually. I mentioned I'd moved to a new place in Belltown. You said, that's nice dear, and then spent 45 minutes discussing Jenna's new dining room table. The memory was crystal clear. Mom hadn't even looked up from her phone, scrolling through photos of Jenna's apartment, the furniture her boyfriend's parents had bought for them. Jenna's voice came out strangled. You're lying. You can't afford $4,800 a month. You work in finance or whatever. That's not real money. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I manage a $380 million portfolio. My base salary is $142,000. Last year, my total compensation was just over $190,000. The number seemed to echo in the silence. Aunt Linda set down her coffee cup. Maya, sweetie, I don't understand. If you're making that kind of money, why do you dress so simply? I looked down at my outfit. White silk blouse. Black trousers. Simple gold jewelry. Simply. I asked. You know what she means, Jenna said, recovering some of her composure. You dress like you shop at Target. I mean, look at that blouse. That's probably $30 from H&M or something. I fingered the collar of my shirt. This is from the row. It cost $890. Jenna's mouth fell open. The trousers are Loro Piana, I continued. $1,200. The shoes are Manolo Blahnik. $795. The earrings are Tiffany. The necklace is Cartier. I paused. Would you like to see the receipts? You're making this up, Jenna said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I pulled out my phone again, opened my email and scrolled to my fashion folder. I'd started keeping receipts after Jenna's third comment about my cheap clothes at Thanksgiving. Some part of me had known this moment would come. Here, I said, turning the screen to show the table. The row purchase. March 15th. $890. Loro Piana. February 23rd. $1,200. Manolo Blahnik. January 9th. $795. I kept scrolling. Brunello Cucinelli cashmere sweater. $1,400. Max Mara coat. $2,200. Celine handbag. The one I carried to Christmas dinner that you said looked like a knockoff. $2,800. Mom had gone very still. You spent $2,800 on a purse? I did, I said. With money I earned. From my job that Jenna seems to think isn't real. Dad cleared his throat. Maya, this is all very surprising. But I think what your mother and I are struggling with is why you've been so secretive about your success. Secretive. The word came out sharper than I intended. Dad, I've tried to tell you. Repeatedly. Last Father's Day, I mentioned I'd received a promotion. You asked if I was finally off probation. His face flushed. At your birthday dinner, Mom, I said I was managing a 9-figure portfolio. You asked if that meant I was keeping track of receipts. Mom's hand went to her mouth. At Thanksgiving, I told you I'd been headhunted by Goldman Sachs. Jenna laughed and asked if I'd be answering their phones. Jenna had the grace to look down at her plate. So no, I said. I haven't been secretive. I've been ignored. Cousin Rachel, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Maya, I think we all just assumed. I mean, you're always so quiet about money. You never talk about your job. You drive a Honda. A Honda Accord Touring, I said. Fully loaded. I paid cash. $37,000. No loan. Uncle Tom whistled low. You paid cash for a car? I pay cash for most things, I said. I don't like debt. I paid off my student loans in 3 years. I have no credit card balance. My only debt is my mortgage. Mortgage? Mom's voice cracked. You said you rent. I said I live in a penthouse in Belltown, I corrected. I never said I rent it. I bought it. 2 years ago. Cash down payment of $240,000. Monthly mortgage payment of $3,200. The remaining $1,600 of my housing cost is HOA fees and property taxes. The silence that followed was deafening. Jenna was shaking her head, tears starting to form in her eyes. This isn't fair. You're just doing this to make me look bad. No, I said. You made yourself look bad when you announced I lived in a shoebox apartment. At a brunch I paid for. Mom's head snapped up. What? I pulled up my banking app, showed them the transaction. The caterer. Bella's Catering. $1,800. Paid March 27th. The ham, the sides, the desserts, the mimosas. All of it. I transferred the money to you 3 weeks ago, Mom. You thanked Jenna for contributing. Mom's face crumpled. The flowers on the table, I continued, gesturing to the elaborate arrangement of lilies and roses. Pike Place flowers. $240. I ordered them directly and had them delivered yesterday. Dad had his head in his hands. Maya, why didn't you correct us when we thanked Jenna? Because I've learned that it doesn't matter what I say, I replied. You believe what you want to believe. Jenna is the success story. Jenna is doing so well. Jenna has her life together. And I'm just there. In my shoebox apartment. Wearing my cheap clothes. Working my not real job. That's not fair, Jenna said, but she was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Isn't it? I asked. Tell me, Jenna. Tell everyone here. Tell them about the rent money. Her face went white. Tell them how you called me last April crying because you were going to be evicted. Tell them how I've been sending you $900 every month for the past year to cover your half of the rent. Jenna made a sound like a wounded animal. $10,800, I said. That's what I've given you in the past 12 months. Not including the car repair I paid for in August. Or the emergency root canal in October. Or the credit card bill I cleared in December when you maxed it out buying Christmas presents you couldn't afford. Mom's champagne glass tipped over. Orange liquid spread across the white tablecloth like a stain. You told us you'd saved up for those Christmas presents, Mom said to Jenna. You said you'd been putting away money all year. Jenna couldn't speak. She just sat there, crying, her hands covering her face. The total amount I've given Jenna in the past year, I said, pulling up a spreadsheet on my phone, is $17,340. And that's not counting the gifts I've bought her, the dinners I've paid for, the Ubers I've covered when she was short on cash. I turned the screen toward my parents. Let them see the itemized list. Every Venmo transfer. Every Zelle payment. Every direct deposit to her account. And it's not just Jenna, I continued. My voice was calm. Level. I'd practiced this conversation in my head 1,000 times. Mom, Dad, I've been helping you too. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. What are you talking about? Your mortgage payment, I said. $1,500 a month. I've been covering it for the past 2 years. Mom gasped. $36,000, I said. That's what I've sent you. You thought it was coming from Jenna. She told you she'd gotten a raise and wanted to help out. That's not, Jenna started, but I cut her off. Your property taxes last year, Dad. $4,000. I paid them directly to the county. You never asked how they got paid. Dad's face had gone gray. Mom's dental work 6 months ago. $8,000. I wrote a check to the dentist. You thanked Jenna for being so generous. I pulled up my banking app one more time, showed them the transaction history. Years of payments. Tens of thousands of dollars. All sent quietly without fanfare while Jenna took credit and I smiled and pretended it was fine. Total amount I've given to this family in the past 2 years, I said, is $78,140. The number hung in the air like smoke. Aunt Linda was staring at Jenna with undisguised disgust. Cousin Rachel had her phone out, probably calculating what kind of salary could support that kind of giving. Uncle Tom broke the silence. Maya, I had no idea. I'm sorry. We all assumed. You assumed I was struggling, I said. Because that's what Jenna told you. Because it was easier than acknowledging that the quiet daughter, the boring one, the one who doesn't post on Instagram or brag about her life, that she might actually be successful. Mom was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. We failed you. Yes, I said. The honesty felt like freedom. You did. Can we fix this? Dad asked. Can we make this right? I looked at him. Mom. At Jenna, still sobbing into her hands. At the 17 people who just watched my family's dysfunction play out over Easter brunch. I don't know, I said. But I'm done pretending. I'm done being small so Jenna can feel big. I'm done funding your lives while you treat me like a charity case. I stood up, smoothing my $1,200 Loro Piana trousers. Thank you for the brunch. The food was excellent. Bella's catering never disappoints. Maya, please don't go, Mom said. We need to talk about this. We just did talk about it, I said. For the first time in years I actually told you the truth. And now I'm going home. To my penthouse. In Belltown. I walked to the door, my Manolo Blahnik heels clicking on the hardwood floor. My Celine purse was hanging on the coat rack. The $2,800 purse Jenna had called a knockoff. Maya. Jenna's voice stopped me at the door. I turned. She was standing now, mascara streaked, hands trembling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant, I didn't want to. You took credit for my money, I said. You let our parents thank you for things I paid for. You called me poor while I was paying your rent. You made me feel small while I was keeping you afloat. I know, she whispered. I know. I was jealous. You're so successful and you don't even try. You don't post about it or talk about it and it made me feel worthless. Like I had to prove I was worth something too. I looked at her for a long moment. Saw the little sister I'd grown up with. The one I'd protected and supported and loved even when she made it so hard. You are worth something, Jenna, I said quietly. But not because you're better than me. Not because I'm failing. Just because you're you. I left before she could respond. I drove home to my penthouse, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the view of Elliott Bay. I changed into sweatpants, Lululemon $128 but comfortable as hell. I poured myself wine, a Napa Valley Cabernet $95 a bottle. And I sat on my balcony 15 floors up, watching the city sparkle in the spring sunshine. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please come back. We need to talk more. Then Dad, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. So very sorry. Then Jenna, I'll pay you back. I promise. Every penny. I didn't respond. Not yet. For the first time in years I didn't feel the need to make them comfortable with my success. I'd earned it. Every dollar. Every designer piece. Every square foot of my penthouse. And I was done apologizing for it.